Hello and welcome to Quest Recapped. Today, we will be going through the 2020 animated fantasy drama film, Soul. The movie begins with a melody that has the potential to sound good but doesn't. And it probably won't, as a bunch of lazy students play their saxophone wishing they were anywhere but in that room. The room is, in fact, a club, run by a lanky figure in his worn-out suit, filled with determination and weariness. We are then introduced to Joe Gardner, a teacher visibly exhausted by the lack of enthusiasm from his students. In an attempt to spark their interest, Joe shares with his students how music is the language he was born to speak. But the world around him remains unchanged. The nonchalant students still do not care. Just then, Joe is interrupted with a piece of news. He is now a full-time teacher at that very school. Yet, he cannot help but feel his dream slipping from his fingers, now farther than ever. Back home, Joe's mother is thrilled by the news, as her middle-aged son is finally a working man. Despite the dissatisfaction in his soul, Joe puts on a smile to match his mother's joy. Amidst his melancholy, he gets an unsuspecting call from his old student, Curly, who gives Joe life-altering news. It turns out that Joe will get to perform with his all-time favorite musician, Dorothea Williams. However, Joe's eagerness is only met with disinterest from his idol, who is too busy being disappointed with their choice of musician. But her initial opinion of the middle school teacher dissipates the second he starts playing. Joe's breathtaking improvised notes clearly reveal how deeply in love he is with his sound. With this, an impressed Dorothea commands him to meet them for their first performance. With this newfound joy, we see Joe running around the town bathing in his delight, oblivious to the chaos around him. Amid his happiness, he suddenly feels himself plunging into darkness. Opening his eyes into the blackness, Joe immediately realizes his physical body has disappeared. And now a radiant blue shape made of a clay-like substance, he stands in an otherworldly void. Frantically, Joe panics to find a way out, but instead, he feels himself ascending to this bright void, where there was nothing but brightness. Racing downward to evade the light, Joe encounters a remarkable sight. Countless other souls just like his are shimmering to ascend to the great beyond, the afterlife. Joe cannot believe he is dying so soon, just when things were finally starting to happen in his life. And amid disbelief, he slips further. Next, Joe falls through the barriers of forces, through dimensions and time, into a hazy field of teal grass. In this peculiar world where the sky is lavender and the clouds are pink, he is greeted by fresh round blue blobs, excitedly picking and poking the newcomer. And as Joe looks around in awe, he is greeted by a mentor. Within the mystical realm of the great before, Joe is a mentor to the unborn souls. He witnesses their personalities take shape and their destinies evolve, and locates where they descend to Earth. Now, Joe has one goal: to go back home. In a haste, Joe learns to mimic the blobs, as he jumps in a free fall down to the earth. But with each attempt, a magical portal yanks him back to the same place. After countless tries, Joe finds out that he has a choice, whether to stay there or go past the great beyond. And with great reluctance, Joe chooses the former. But something is amiss, as Terry, who is the accountant of the departing souls, notices that one soul has not advanced to the great beyond. The mentors of the souls, who are all named Jerry, dismiss the accountant to figure out the problem himself. Therefore, Terry goes on a search to solve the mystery on his own. On the other hand, Joe successfully gets to the U Seminar, which is a workshop for new teachers to match with their individual students and help them develop a spark. This spark completes their personality and makes them eligible to descend. Upon hearing this, Joe conjures up an evil scheme. He plans to help a student find their spark, steal it, and go back to living his soon-to-be successful life. While the new souls continue to match with their destined teachers, it is finally Joe's turn. He had stolen the name tag of Dr. Borgensen, who was a Nobel Prize-winning child psychologist. Straight away, the host announces soul number 22, but nobody comes forward. To Joe's frustration, it turns out his disciple is a defiant young soul who does not, at any cost, want to go to Earth. Now, the unborn soul challenges his new teacher and brags about how none of the great personalities, including Gandhi and Lincoln, could encourage her to go live life. The audacity! However, a surprising revelation of Joe's true identity changes everything. 22 agrees to collaborate with Joe, working to develop a spark in exchange for skipping life altogether. Despite his best efforts, Joe cannot ignite a spark in the stubborn heart of 22. Still, not giving up, Joe asks the little soul to take him to the Hall of Everything. The Hall of Everything is, quite literally, a hall of everything. There's everything you could think to try, from sports to cooking, science to literature. But the dispassionate 22 is not interested in anything. After a long while, they leave the place feeling dejected, only to be greeted by a Jerry. The wise mentor gently imparts how it is time for Joe to leave for the great beyond as he failed to inspire a student. At this, 22 makes an unexpected excuse and dashes her teacher away for an escape. Consequently, 22 leads Joe to a dubious place, at which Joe questions her true motives. The mischievous soul provokingly assures that she only wants to see why he wants to go back to his sad, pathetic life so badly. Joe brushes off the offense and takes in the view. He is mesmerized by the thousands of souls lost in their art, and as 22 describes, they are in the zone. But before he can bask in the amazement, some trouble has come his way already. There is a humongous monster relentlessly chasing the two souls, forcing them into a desperate race. Just as all seems lost, a captivating astral pirate, Moonwind, intervenes and captures the monster. In glee and gratitude, it turns out that 22 is actually well acquainted with the pirate. After a successful rescue, a curious Joe watches as the mystics calm the monster from before. It turns out he is actually a troubled trade worker filled with anxiety. They liberate the monster and send him to his world through a magical portal. This inspires Joe, who attempts to create his own portal, but he only finds himself faced with a return to the great beyond. This raises some questions among the mystics, but Joe quickly shuts down the accusations of his demise and hesitantly agrees to travel with them. Now, as they journey on the glowing ship in a sea of stardust, the mystics reveal how they leave their body every Tuesday to explore the universe. At last, they reach their destination, a place where the line is thin. As per Moonwind's instructions, Joe sits down and focuses on aligning with his body. Slowly but surely, a portal materializes, overviewing New York City. In a hospital that mostly smells of sanitizers, Joe locates his body, unconscious below a napping cat. Joe is now consumed by overwhelming impatience and disregards Moonwind's warnings as he recklessly leaps into the portal, dragging 22 along. But, to their horror, 22 finds herself engulfed in the body of Joe, and in turn, Joe's soul resides in the cat's body. With this, they both panic, Joe because of the obvious misfiring, and 22 because her worst nightmare came true. But there is no time to waste unwinding, as Mr. Mitten's owner will come to get him in 10 minutes and they have got to find Moonwind before then. Thankfully, they remember the address he gave them, and they escape the hospital successfully. But the real challenge comes now. 22, for whom it is the first time experiencing the crowds and noises, freaks out and runs away to God knows where. In a frenzy, Mr. Mittens, or Joe, finally finds 22, who is cowering in the street side shivering with hunger. Meanwhile, Joe brings her a slice of pizza. 22, who has never tasted anything better, or anything really, instantly feels energetic. And with a newfound determination, they finally locate Moonwind. But, to their dismay and Joe's panic, he informs them there is no way to reverse before 6:30 p.m. Still, Joe is not dispirited and he forces 22 to look presentable. However, another disaster occurs. Joe is seen in his revolting state by none other than Dorothea Williams. Digesting the humiliation, they reach Joe's apartment where he gets a hopeful call from Curly. Meanwhile, Connie, Joe's student, pays a visit to deliver the news of her resignation. In a surprising turn, 22 engages in a conversation with Connie, witnessing the passion radiating from her eyes as she plays her saxophone. A shift occurs within 22's perspective, and she suddenly declares that she will help Joe. But there's a catch. 22 wants to try out some things Earth has to offer. Fully amenable to any idea as long as he gets to perform, Joe rushes his body into showering and puts on his best suit. Meanwhile, back at the Great Before, Terry has finally found what he has been searching for, the mystery person who defied death, Joe Gardner. So, he embarks on a journey to bring him back. Back on Earth, in an attempt to fix his hair, Joe shaves it instead. Now it needs real fixing, so they dash to Dez's, the barbershop. Although strange at first, 22 manages to inspire and intrigue everyone with her unique view on life and leaves the shop full of admirers and well-wishers. And seeing this, Joe is pleasantly surprised. That is not to say they were completely safe, as Terry had traced the evidence and was only an arm's length away from tracking down the defier of death, who was on the other side of the town, enjoying new tastes and new sensations. But unfortunately, Joe's tight-fitted suit painfully rips. Now, there is no choice but to go to Joe's mom, who is a tailor. After much not-so-critical thinking, Joe reluctantly leads 22 towards his mother's shop. But 22 seems to have been enamored by a troubadour, as she felt the music in her soul. And as they have no time to waste, they immediately head towards the shop. Even though they spent the whole way practicing their excuse, their lies die before they come out as the atmosphere is already tense at the store. It turns out Joe's mother already knows, and she is tired of him chasing around gigs that amount to nothing. But Joe phrases that he is more concerned with his life amounting to nothing. This shakes his mother to the core, as she truly sees her son's purpose shining. Joe's mom shows immense affection and fits him into his dad's dashing suit, gifting him more encouragement. Now looking like $1 million, Joe sits before the door of the half-note waiting for Moonwind to fix everything. For once, 22 stops and look around him. The leaves falling, people chattering, something resolves inside of him. He realizes that he does not want to go back. After voicing his desires, he springs up to his feet and runs away from a shocked Joe and a confused Moonwind. Now, Joe chases his body with all his life, which is running further away from him. At last, he finally corners 22, but something unexpected happens. Alas! Both of them have fallen for Terry's trap, and their desperate attempts prove to be futile as they are transported back to the great before. Amidst the blame game between Joe and 22, her mentors realize something. 22 has gotten the Earth Pass, and she has found her spark. But what is it? This question haunts her, and Joe isn't helping much either, insisting that she only got it because she lived in his body. On the other hand, there is Terry, who is adamant about taking Joe's soul with him to the great beyond. But, upon hearing his compliments, he backs away. Classic arrogance. It is now time for the mentors to bid their students goodbye. But there is nothing wholesome about theirs, as the teacher resents 22 with all his heart for stealing his dream away from him. 22 does something striking now, as she throws her Earth Pass at Joe, who is too taken aback to notice his student succumb to darkness, believing she has no purpose of existence. Joe has no time for this though, as he happily accepts his new life and rushes to the half-note, where he is to play tonight. He finds out he has lost his position already, but hells break loose before he goes down without a fight. He has literally come back to life for this, and his determination wins back his place. Eventually, Joe makes it to the concert, and it goes so well. He looks at all the happy smiles of the people he loves while drinking in the standing ovation he has waited for his entire life. But it still does not feel as astounding as he thought it'd feel. In the stillness of the night, Joe shares his perplexing emotions with Dorothea, who simply explains this is how it's always going to be. After a long night, Joe returns to his dark apartment and reflects back on his life. As the memories of all his happy moments and thoughtful realizations come flooding back to him, Joe thinks of 22 and what it really means to live. He realizes it is the minor details that make life worth living, the small things far outweigh the big ones. Next, Joe is filled with unwavering resolve, and he enters the zone. Searching for 22, he meets Moonwind, only to discover that the one he seeks has become a lost soul. This shakes him, but Joe still persists, even though 22 resists him with rage and contempt. But Joe chases the monster she is becoming and locks himself inside her turmoil to rescue 22. Within the depths of 22's being, she is plagued by the relentless voices constantly reminding her she is simply not good enough to live. This breaks Joe's heart, as his voice is the most persistent. Luckily, he finds something that might help, a leaf that made 22 want to try living. It works, since it's the symbol of possibility and the catalyst of change, and soon, 22 wakes from the depths of despair with newfound hope. It is ultimately the time for 22 to try her own life, even if it means that Joe will have to face his demise. Joe assures the scared 22 that it is going to be alright, and with a bittersweet smile, he bids her farewell. With a content smile, Joe allows himself to be transported to the bridge of great beyond. But at the very gate, he is stopped by someone. A Jerry has come to visit him, not without a gift. She explains how rare it is for someone to inspire the inspirers, and they want to give him another chance at life. Not believing his luck, Joe accepts, and the movie ends with his promise to live every day to its fullest. We have come to the end of this video. Thank you for watching. Kindly like, subscribe, and share this video. If you also have thoughts you intend to share, kindly leave them in the comment section. See you in the next video.